serving in the Department of Corrections is they're woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We do a secure account. At that time, we will escort them to their appropriate chow hall, which is where they eat their meal. They have up to 10 minutes to sit and eat their meal. They will return back to their housing unit, in which we will conduct another count, and then we will allow them to go to the day-to-day operations. So inmates have work assignments. They are to report to their work assignments as scheduled. If they have call-outs for medical, classification, case management, they are to be accounted for, and we will go through the same process 3 times a day. So closer to the noon meal, around 11 o'clock, everyone will fall into their assignment. Those who are working, regardless of where you're at, we will do a count. We will go through the lunch meal, and then we'll repeat it again around 4:30 approximately in the evening, so we can make sure everyone's accounted for. Then they return back to their housing unit, and after dark, they are all secured in secured housing, and no inmates are allowed to be out of those buildings unless there's an emergency with proper security, shackles, and handcuffs to whatever assignment they have to go. Otherwise, they remain in those housing units till the next day, in which it is repeated again.
So they're not just roaming around the prison all day?
Absolutely not. They're told when to do, what to do, when to do it.
I didn't hear you mention a shower. Do they get to shower?
They get to shower. We are required by accreditation standards to give them a minimum of 3 showers a week, but because those individuals are in an environment where they don't have their own showers, it's based on who the population is, usually about 250 inmates for like 7 to 10 showers. So they're sharing spaces.
And I don't know if you might have mentioned this, but the housing itself, are they in a dorm style, or what does their personal housing look like?
Their personal housing is, Department of Corrections, we know it as HO5 and HO4 housing. That's the housing assignment we give individuals who are serving a life sentence. And HO5 is an individual cell that's designed with 2 men in it. That's more the old prison style. Like I worked at Tomoka Corrections in Polk, old prisons because of the design at the time. Because we've had individuals serving life, we also code them, the Department of Corrections codes them as HO4. HO4 is the same type of secure housing, but these individuals are more in a communal environment, almost like a military style. The integrity of the building is still designed to hold lifers, but because a lot of the old prisons, the footprint is very antiquated and very manpower intensive, we have other type of industry standard housing, but they are in an HO4 status.
If someone is sentenced to life without parole, meaning they're not getting out, is there any incentive for them to follow the rules while they're in prison?
Well, every inmate in the Department of Corrections is required to work. And if they do not show up to work, even those who are medically indigent, they're required to work. They will face administrative outcomes, basically receive a disciplinary report for refusing to work, and if that continues to escalate, we move them into another level of status based on the classification and their negative adjustment in the prison setting.
And what would be their incentives to follow the rules other than just where they're housed? Do they get any benefit for following the rules?
They would have their privileges not revoked. Privileges such as family visits, commissary, inmate tablets, access to the TV, even access to programs. Those are the privileges in which they have to follow the rules in order to keep them.
And so you indicated that they are required, those inmates will be required to work 60 hours a week, and even if they're disabled. Is it safe to say that prison can be made even more comfortable for a person, or uncomfortable, sorry, if they refuse to work or they're not following the rules? Yes,
in the system, it's designed, if they continue to refuse to show up to work or their assigned area, they will get disciplinary reports. As they continue to escalate those disciplinary reports, then they will be considered for close management. And what close management status is, those individual inmates in the prison system that are not following the rules, they become a security concern, not only for the other inmates, but the day-to-day operations, at which time the institutional classification team will review them, place them on a docket, as they say, to be reviewed by central office, and move to a facility such as Santa Rosa Correctional Institution, Martin Correctional Institution, Columbia, to name a few, in which they house close management 1, 2, and 3 statuses. These individuals, for the most part, are locked in a single cell by themselves, They don't have any privileges, just to see medical every day, as well as their meals, and not even but twice a week get uniform and allowed out of their cell 3 times a week. They will remain in that status till they start complying with the rules and regulations, in which they will eventually, hopefully, move out of that status if they start conforming to the rules.
And you gave some examples earlier. I just wanted to follow up some of the things that inmates do in the way of work at the prison. You included cooking, is that right?
Yes, we have to prepare 3 meals, as well as even dietary meals for the inmate population. So we use a lot of the inmate labor to do all the meal preparation, as well as keeping up with sanitary requirements. We have to launder all the food as well. We have also inmates, the department has to assign inmates who have skills in maintenance, because the Department of Corrections utilizes 80% of the inmate labor to keep up with the aging facilities that the prison system has. That's something on a national level. We put them to work. They do not have any kind of financial compensation. They're required to. We also keep up the grounds, as well as utilize them in different capacities. Those who might have a high school diploma might be part of the orientation for the new inmates coming into the prison system, sort of like a peer-to-peer, helping those, particularly those coming in with a term of years, to hopefully take advantage of the programs and not return back to the prison system.
You mentioned yard work. Do they do painting, electrical work, things like that based on their skill set?
They do plumbing, painting, electrical. Keep in mind, they're under the supervision of what we know as a vocational instructor, so they're not freely having any access to tools. They're always supervised. Because of a prison design, things do break down at night, so sometimes, depending on the skill set, staff is dispatched, or even the corrections officers have to supervise them to keep up with these repairs. Wastewater treatment programs, some of the prisons in the Department of Corrections, I know personally, have been assigned to places where we don't have direct water access, so we have our own water and treatment programs, so we have to keep up with that as well.
You indicated that the inmates themselves don't make any money or commissary off of that work, is that right?
No.
Would you say that they save the Department of Corrections in the state of Florida money?
Yes, they do.
Because you indicated, I think, what, 80% of the work done is done by inmates?
Yes, I mean, keeping in mind, we're talking almost 80 prisons throughout the state of Florida and the aging buildings that they have. If it was not for the inmate labor, it would be quite challenging and financially a challenge to the agency to keep up with all the repairs.
Do they do anything that they can contribute outside the prison? Is there any work? I know, and this may be like way old school, we'd see inmates making like license plates. They probably don't do that anymore, but are they doing anything for people outside of the prison?
Actually, they still do license plates.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. In my years, and still to this day, we have different events. So actually, we use inmate laborers who might have some carpentry skills. They actually do a big thing every year in different agencies throughout the United States for Toys for Tots. We also use them to create the inmate uniforms, their inmate boots. We keep up also refurbishing of vehicles. When I worked at the women's facility, the women there did the eye contacts and the dentures for the prison system. So we utilize them to work through our partnership, through PRIDE, the Prison Rehabilitative and Industrial Enterprise company that is a partnership. We put them to work with this particular partner to keep us sustained and also cost saving. They also do the furniture at Polk Correctional Institution. For those agencies that want to buy furniture, there's a furniture factory there as well.
And PRIDE, I think you said, is it Prison Rehabilitative Industrial Diversified Enterprise?
Yes.
That's a mouthful, but okay.
It's a lot.
So an inmate sentenced to life without parole, would you agree, is a resource for inside the prison as well as society in some cases?
Yes.
What about, you talked about visitation and some incentives for following the rules. What are inmates in prison allowed to communicate with people on the outside, and if so, how?
Yes, they are allowed. There's the new industry standard. Typically, they can call on the phones, in which they can call out, but also we have tablets. It's the new industry standard. Inmates are assigned a tablet in which they can either do video visitation in some facilities and even text in a secure server to communicate with their family members as well.
And I assume that's all monitored by the department?
Completely, yes.
And is it free to the inmate?
No,
The tablet's free, but the communications aren't, is that right?
correct. There's a fee for the text as well as any kind of communication with outside folks.
Now I want to move on to talk to you a little bit about if someone's serving, or they're sentenced to death and they become a death row inmate in Florida, how is an inmate on death row housed physically?
Physically, when you're housed in a death row environment, particularly at Union CI, go there often, they're housed in a 6x9 cell, single-person housing with a mattress, their assigned TV, stainless steel sink and toilet, as well as our provided services. They also, 3 years ago, changed the process in which now inmates on death row also are allowed and issued a tablet, as well as they're allowed a lot more time out of their cells as historically, and also have family visits. Their food is delivered to them, and their uniforms are delivered to them, but they're not required to work.
Let me just take those a little bit one at a time. So you said the TV, do they have their own TV?
Yes.
What about the inmates that are serving life without parole? Do they get their own TV?
No, each side of the dorm or each pod or quad is, depending what you call it, the department has to share a TV in that environment. So there's often fights and stuff, but they basically, amongst the prison population, have to determine what channel of the limited channels they can see.
But somebody that's on death row will have their own TV?
Yes.
And do they go to the chow hall to eat, or you said they get the food delivered to them?
Their 3 meals are delivered to them on the row.
Do they do their own laundry?
No.
So somebody else, the inmates that are working, do their laundry and bring it to them?
The inmate laundry is done by the inmate laundry trustees, as we often call them, and they will be delivered on a weekly schedule, exchange their uniforms.
And I believe you said that they are not required to work. Are they able to work?
They're able to work, but they're not required to work.
Do inmates sentenced to death contribute to the prison workforce in any way?
No.
So let me turn your attention to Mr. Gathright, Sean Gathright. Did you have an opportunity to meet with him?
Yes, I did.
Okay, do you recall when that was? And you can look at your notes if you need to.
March
refresh.
1st, 2026, at the Hillsborough County Jail.
And what was his demeanor, just generally, when you met with him?
Very pleasant, a young individual who was very articulate. We spoke, he was very respectful, had a good meeting with him.
And I assume you know that he's relatively young, at 20 years old right now.
Yes, he was booked at the age of 18, he's 20 now.
Did you learn through records provided by my office that Mr. Gathright was a high school graduate?
Yes,
Okay, let me ask you a little bit about that. You mentioned earlier in your direct about somebody with an education. Certain inmates can maybe be kind of mentors or peer-to-peer, I think you described it, working with inmates that are serving a term of years, meaning they are getting out of prison. Do you think that Mr. Gathright would have that ability if he were serving a life without parole sentence?
he would have that ability. Of course, classification, we'll have to look at his behavior, but the fact that he does have a high school diploma, that is one of the requirements to be an inmate student aid, because they're helping other individual prisoners obtain some kind of education programming, so they have to have a high school diploma. So he does have the credentials to be considered for that type of work assignment.
And as you said, when he gets to classification, somebody there will make all these determinations once they evaluate him physically, mentally, behaviorally, all of that stuff, right?
That's correct.
And based on your previous work as a classification officer, you feel comfortable saying that he could potentially be in that role?
Based on my experience and 4 decades, someone who I met and got the opportunity to speak to, and his current housing assignment, he has the potential to be considered for an assignment like that once in the prison system, but that would be over a period of time. Every inmate who's brought into a permanent prison will have to go through a period of observation, and usually they start on inside grounds for the first 3 to 6 months, and depending how well they do out in the heat and behave and follow the rules, then they can be considered for other positions which have more responsibilities or level of trust, but always supervised by staff.
And in the Department of Corrections, are there also what you consider faith and character facilities?
Yes, that is a new industry standard in the last 5 to 7 years. The Department of Corrections has quite a few of those that are spread out throughout the state.
And what do they offer to an inmate serving, well, I assume they don't include death row inmates, but if somebody's serving life without parole, what would that mean?
Anyone in the prison system up to life is eligible to be considered to go to that facility. For example, you have Sumter Correctional Institution, Everglades Correctional Institution, but you have to show a 2-year record of following the rules, no disciplinary reports, no kind of security concerns, just to be considered. There's an application process in which they will have to go through, because these facilities, they're also known as incentivized prisons. So they only want those inmates who are respectful, following the rules, and not going to be a security concern.
And based on Mr. Gathright's age, physical abilities, things like that, do you think that the prison would benefit from him in a work capacity if he were sentenced to life without parole?
I say yes, with my experience, not only just in classification, but as former warden and even as a jail administrator. He's someone that's young, he's healthy. In reality, we need that labor, we need that sweat equity, and we will put him out there to work, because we do have an aging prison population, jail administration. We have that, so we put these young individuals to work and get some sweat equity out of them, since they are young and actually can do the work.
And I know we talk about life without parole and death row, but for our jurors' education, in Florida, what does a life sentence without parole mean?
A life sentence in the Florida Department of Corrections means from the minute they're brought in, they're assigned an inmate number. He will be assigned an inmate number, and when he dies and leaves in a body bag, he will still have that inmate number. An inmate serving life will never, ever get out. There is no parole in the state of Florida, and they're not ever allowed outside the razor wire and the fence of a secured facility.
So the only way that an inmate serving life without parole would leave is when they die by natural causes.
Objection, Your Honor, we're asking answer.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may I have a moment?
Yes.
I'll talk to the witness. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Mr. Harmon?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Mr. Bonasco, you throughout your testimony have been using the term "we" when you're talking about the DOC. You keep doing it. You're no longer employed by the Florida Department of Corrections, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And you separated from a corrections job here in Florida in 2010, but that was a county corrections job,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
You